Hey guys, welcome back. This is Pamela with Pamela's Tarot Tales, and I am at a friend's house that has a condo rented on the beach. And this is typical Florida weather, you guys. I packed up. It was sunny and gorgeous, like 70, 71 degrees. I was like, perfect. This is great beach weather. There's also a pool. I can go hang out. Well, within a span of like 45 minutes, storms rolled in. It's terrible weather. It dropped to about 65 degrees, which is fine. But anyway, so I decided to come to the beach anyway, but I'm inside the house instead of out. So I was hoping to take you guys on a tour, but maybe another time. So anyway, I wanted to do a VR to Ash from the Tarot Yogi. I have been trying to do this video for a week now, and it just never happened. So anyway, I tried to make some notes. I have so much to say on this topic. This is what are your clairs? And I have a lot to say. So I may make multiple videos. I don't know, because I'm hoping I don't forget something. I even tried to write notes and they're just so scattered. So I'm hoping this video won't be super scattered. Anyway, so let's get started. So Ash from the Tarot Yogi brought up, what are your clairs? Where did you kind of develop them? How do they play a part in your life? Just your experience with them and talking about your stories and holding space to share that. And for me, that has always been a very vulnerable thing to be able to share. So I'm holding this as safe space for myself and for anybody else who wants to talk about this stuff. So if you have questions or you want to share your stories, I highly recommend doing this VR. I have deliberately chosen not to watch anybody's videos before I make this video, and so I'm going to be binge watching afterwards. So anyway, so a little bit, I guess, about my story with the clairs is I think I know I've always had them. And I I remember glimpses of being very, very young, and I'm talking about baby in a crib type thing, and being in this one specific room in our house, actually in multiple rooms, but I remember seeing things. I remember seeing spirits, and I remember, I don't remember the interactions with them. I just remember some of them were scary, some of them were really friendly, and I remember seeing beings. I remember trying to communicate. This was before I could talk. I didn't have speech at this age of development. And I remember trying to communicate this with my parents and being so frustrated that they could not understand my means of communication, pointing and crying and being really frustrated and not being frustrated at not being able to speak about it in a way that someone could understand. So I think having that experience, I kind of shut down a little bit the third eye and shut down some of those abilities because it's hard when you have no one to talk about them with. And it makes you feel frustrated and it makes you feel a little crazy. So you know, it's natural to kind of want to shut that off a little bit. Uh, so as I got older and um, and it was actually my uncle who kind of figured that out, that I was seeing things and seeing beings and feeling those experiences and hearing them and, everything. And he told my parents, and I guess back then, this was in the 80s. They didn't really know um, what to do about it or how to deal with it or how to get help from me. So it just was always encouraged, but it was from a level of that, well, we don't know how to help you with it. So as I was a little bit older, my grandfather passed away, and I was probably about 7, 8, somewhere along in there. I think I was about 7. And my grandfather and I were very, very close. And when he passed, he died of cancer. And when he passed, I saw his spirit, and it looked like a spirit. It was in color, it was translucent. I saw him many places, not just one, and multiple times. And it was his way of letting me know that he's okay. He was no longer suffering. He looked healthy. It was back to a memory, I guess, or a vision of where I would recognize him in good health, because I saw him in really poor health. And when you're a kid, you want to tell your best friend and get some, I don't know, support through that process. And no one, growing up in a really small town, um, where these kinds of things just don't happen, or they're not talked about, or they're not acceptable, or you're crazy. And I wasn't crazy. I knew what I saw, and I was um, able to wave at him and talk to him, and um, but it was also scary because I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know how to deal with it. I would talk to my mom and my grandmother about it, and they were very supportive. They very much believed me. They very much knew it was possible, but again, um, didn't really know how to help me develop that skill, help me understand it, help me understand what was happening and how to. But it was always talked about as a gift, and so, but when you tell other kids, they think you're crazy and they laugh at you and make fun of you. And so those things, I think, when they do, and when you're that young, you're very impressionable, and that when that doesn't feel safe to share those experiences, you shut them down. And um, when you don't know how to protect yourself in a way that it it doesn't feel vulnerable to share those experiences, that shapes how you experience life and how you share those experiences that you have in life, because I've had a lot. um, and I'm sure not as many as some, and I'm sure more than others. It's not a competition by any means. Um, so anyway, after that, and I've always been very sensitive, and we found out, so my mother's also very sensitive, and my grandmother was very sensitive, and um, growing up, we didn't know what empaths were. We didn't know what HSPs were, highly sensitive people. These things just either didn't make it to our neck of the woods, or just wasn't talked about, or I don't really know. It was not known at that time, for us. And so we found out, I think I was in college, maybe even after college, that what empaths were. And my mom and I were like, "Oh my God, this is everything, because we are empaths." And then we started researching, well, what goes along with that, and is everybody an empath, and what does that mean, and what about these other abilities, and you know, um, and seeing spirits and seeing things and hearing things, and what does all of that mean? And uh, so we started doing some research and understanding, just having that support of knowing that, one, that there's other people out there that are that way, and two, that it's okay. It's we knew it was okay, but it felt like such a punishment. It felt like such torture to to feel other people's stuff and not know how to deal with it, and not know that it was others, thinking it was yours. Uh, seeing spirits in our house, and you know, okay, well, what do we do about that, and how do we function with that? Um, so those are kind of, and learning about empaths, learning that there are different types of empaths, that those are important to understand as well, and people have different abilities within that subset of abilities, and knowing that is really helpful information for me anyway. So yeah, and so getting to the clairs specifically, I I think all of us have all five. We all have the ability to tap into all five. Some of us come into this world with more developed than others, and you can speculate as to why. For me, it's from the belief and the knowing that, because I've seen many of my own past lives, I've seen other people's past lives. I know that I've lived this life. I'm an old soul. I've been here many times, and yet I'm here again doing it again. And so I think we come into this world with certain things and certain lessons, and lessons to learn and lessons that to be applied. So um, that being said, I think we all have all five. Some of us are more open to learning about them and developing them. Some of us have them already more developed, and it's possible if you are willing and wanting to, you can develop them. And the way that they come through, you have a natural inclination to one or two, or maybe three, depending on how much they're developed. But they may come in different information in different ways, as you need them, as whatever you're working on, whatever you're dealing with, and how you're able to receive the information that day, that moment in time, and from that person. So for me, so the five clairs are the clairaudient, hearing, clairsentient, feeling, claircognizant, knowing, clairolfactory, smell, and clairvoyant, seeing. Those are the five clairs. And mine that are, I'm able to use all of them. And some of them come in different ways, and some of them are more developed. My primary one is clairsentient, and that's the feeling space. A lot of things come through my filter of feeling space. That is what I'm most in tune with, especially being an empath, especially being a highly sensitive person. Um, that's how I receive information most readily, most easily. My next most developed, I think, is clairvoyant. Clairvoyant, the seeing. I see things. And along with that comes the other ones. So those are probably my two primary, my go-tos, what I've developed, well, what was more natural and much more easier to develop. The and actually, come to think of it, Claire olfactory is one that played a part. I had an experience when my grandmother was about to pass. Because my grandfather had died of cancer, that's what I had associated with death and disease, and it's an indicator. And cancer has I have a very weird relationship with smells, and cancer has a very, very specific smell, at least the type he had, um, and it triggers a lot of stuff for me. And smells trigger a lot of stuff for me. And one experience I had, my grandmother. I was laying in bed and I smelled cancer, and I had this horrible feeling, and I knew someone was going to die, and I knew that it was someone close to me, and I knew that it was a family member. And I thought it was my grandmother, but she was actually okay that day. And I called her and I said, "Are you okay? What's going on?" "No, no, baby, I'm fine." I called my mother and I told her what was going on. I said, "Something's going on." Well, and that I smelled cancer, and um, that they need to get things in order. My grandmother was in a place like a assisted living kind of place, or she had been in and out of like a physical healing center kind of thing, like nursing home, but it wasn't a nursing home. But and I was like, "Mom, somebody, this is, have you had the death bells?" Because she gets death bells when she gets three ringings in the ear, then someone that we know dies. I usually get ringings in the ear at the same time, but mine are multiples. But when she gets three that are really deafening, they're scary, then we know that there's a death to follow, and it's every time. So anyway, um, within 3 days, my grandmother passed, and she um, and I told my mom she needed to go be with her, and that it was a process and all of that. But that's one example where I've had smell come into play, and I've had anyway, I could go on and on about all my experiences, and and that's probably multiple videos, but uh, I guess that one's been more developed too, but it comes in less frequently when I'm receiving information, when I'm looking at information, and how I utilize all of these clairs. Um, but they do come in different ways, and sometimes they're when I'm looking for things, when I'm doing um, energy work on clients, when I am doing Reiki, when I am doing tarot readings, all of these things, I use my clairs. I mean, I'm basically channeling information. So, but when I do my animal communication, that is essentially telepathy, and I will do a video on this. But I use my clairs for that. I'm an animal empath as well, so that means I can feel what the animals feel. Um, so anyway, I'm going into a lot of tangents, and there's a lot of depth I can go into each one of those things. But I'm going to bring it back to the clairs specifically. So, um, I know I've always known that I've had these things, and I didn't know what they were. I didn't know how to deal with them, um, and so I started doing research. And when I guess my gateway into that was being an empath and learning about being an empath. Uh, and found out about the clairs. I was like, yep, I have those, all of them. Check, check, check. Uh, and then when I was in South Carolina, I was living in South Carolina. It's about 5 years ago. I um, I just wanted to meet some people that were into this kind of thing, so that I could learn and be around people and feel safe to talk about it. Because where I grew up, it didn't feel safe, and still doesn't feel safe to talk about it. Uh, so, but I'm working through that, and I'm talking about it. So, uh, but I was in South Carolina, and I met through a meetup group my best friend, who's also my holistic doctor, and she was holding with one of her friends a meetup group to talk about, I don't even remember, spiritual stuff in relationship to psychic development. Um, and I was like, okay, so I'm gonna go check this out. And I met her and her friend, and she, my best friend, who is a medical intuitive, um, and I was having a tremendous amount of health problems, and they were both offering a free session. One was a life coach, and one was and then the other, my best friend, is the medical intuitive. And I had sessions with both, and I ended up hiring my best friend and working with her, and I still work with her extensively for my health and my development and things like that. So I I that's also how my kind of spiritual path started. And I was looking for meditation, and she offered meditation. She offered me to, after our session, she told me about meditation at her house and a group, and I still belong to that group, and even though it's now online, and because she lives elsewhere now. But anyway, I'm getting sidetracked because there's so much to talk about. There's so much. So anyway, I knew that I had some abilities. She has tremendous abilities. Uh, she's very much visual, but has them all, but I guess mostly visual. And so medical intuitive is one that can see inside the body and can help with medical issues. She can see the viruses, the blood, the cells, the organs, all of those things. And it just comes naturally to her. It's her God-given gift, which is amazing. Um, so she would do uh, muscle testing on me for allergies and for information, and then she'd do energy sessions with me. And that's when I kind of got introduced to psychic stuff for healing, and how she does that and looks at it and sees it and works with the energy, and how she sees it. And she sees it differently than I do. She can see things in colors and shapes and patterns, and um, and zoom in and out, and it's pretty amazing. And so by watching her and by working with her, I started getting more and more interested in developing my skill sets. So I took some classes from, they were like little workshops, and I met them through Meetup. And there was two different teachers or groups that or ladies that I worked with, and um, one of them I responded well more to the other than the other. The other one seemed more um, introductory, and I was like, yeah, I know that. Yeah, I know how to do that. So it was more confidence building and more assurance for me. But I saw the other people that took those classes and how it really helped them develop, and not just develop their confidence, but actually develop their skill sets and abilities. And it was pretty brilliant the way that they had these things laid out and how they talked about them, and doing some exercises that would help you develop your psychic skill sets, and working with communicating with others through these exercises, and tuning in and to their energy and what's going on, and looking at it. And it was really helpful. Um, and then I ended up taking another lady, and that one was through a meetup, but we would meet up, and then we would have on Skype this lady that was in Ohio. She's now in South Florida. So, and that was really good. But I found that being in a room full of people as an empath, being around a bunch of other people that are doing psychic development, and the chatter and the energy and all this stuff floating around, I it was too much. It was too much. And I was learning how to develop, but I was also learning how to shield, and learning how to know what's mine and not mine. And it just was so much that one night it really sent me into kind of a little mini panic attack almost. And I walked outside, and I could not cope. And the woman hosting it came out and brought some frankincense, and she was completely helpful and understanding and wonderful. Um, and I left that night, um, and we had, yeah, and then they were like, well, you can do it online, because that acts as a filter, as a buffer, and it also allows you to kind of regulate yourself better. And so that's when I started doing things more online. Um, and it turns out during that development, one of those classes of development, I don't remember which one, I think we were trying to learn how to read um, auras, and kind of what you saw around the person. And, I struggle with that one. It's not really my strength, but I did see a being with the host's youngest daughter, and um, the daughter had some abilities, and was seeing a family of support, of ghosts, of spirits, and they were basically causing some issues. And I didn't see the human ones. I saw the other being that was with this, um, and I asked if anybody else saw it, and we ended up helping it to move on and get back home where he belonged. And it was really a weird and fantastic experience. And I've since had an experience with that same being that where they've thanked me and showed me so much love and gratitude, and showed me his family that he got back to, and um, and that's great confirmation. You think you're nuts, but it's pretty amazing. Anyway, so I was developing through those, and then I was in a really crappy job, and it was pretty miserable, and I ended up leaving. But before that, I'm kind of jumping all over the place with this, but if we back up into that kind of the closer to the beginning of that 5 years, I ended up, through my best friend, learning about what Reiki is, because I had never heard of it. And healing, and I very much identified as a healer. I very much had used my empathic abilities to as a teacher. I taught at the collegiate level and in art, and really helping students to develop their work for them and what they were trying to say in their messages. And I very much used my abilities, my sensitivities for that. Um, so I identified as a healer, and I was curious about it. And my friend was like, maybe you should look into Reiki. So I did, and I ended up getting certified in North Carolina, in Asheville. I took Reiki 1, 2, and 3. She had it broken down into 4 sections, so I'm not a Reiki master yet, but I have the advanced Reiki training. So I have 1, 2, and the advanced Reiki training. So, um, and that's, and I had already started developing so much of my abilities, but when I was doing Reiki, um, and learning and being attuned, it just opened up so much more. There was a couple times I actually had to leave the room to collect myself, and uh, I would see things and, you know, hear things and mostly see things and feel things and so much feeling, so much feeling, um, and working on others and and sharing that with the partner that I was paired with, and he was also had abilities, and so it was very safe to talk about all those things in that space, um, and like I said, I'd already started developing them at that point, but Reiki and being attuned kind of busts that wide open even more. Um, so yeah, these are some of the things that have kind of happened, and now I use these abilities for my animal communication practice, for my tarot practice, for reading for clients. I do energy healing work with clients and doing energy readings, and I can see all of that, and I can tap in. And I've done a lot of exchanges with my best friend to help develop this, and I am developing the medical side of it, and not to replace doctors or anything like that, but to help with the energetics of it so that it goes hand in hand. And I do see things within the body, and I do um, work with that energy and how to work with that. So yeah, this is getting to be a really long video. Like I said, I warned you this is going to be long. I have so much to say. I could go on and on and on about experiences and how this affected me. How did I work with it? Um, and I still am learning, and I'm still developing, and I do have, um, like I said, all of them developed. But not some, not as well as others. For instance, the taste one, the olfactory. Uh, I was working on when I was working with those workshops. I I started doing some from online from Florida, and had a partner, and they had an object in their hand, and they were I couldn't see the object, and you had to tap in and really connect with that person and the object, and I forget what this is called. There's a name for it when you work with objects. um, I don't remember, but so anyway, that's when I more of the taste came in, and I was like, oh, that's new. And I tasted a metallic taste. I was like, is it metallic taste? Is it metallic? And then I would hear things, and it ended up she had a brass bell in her hand, and that's a really interesting thing, and it's something to play with. And when you have other people that are developing their skills and learning, it's really fun to, and it feels safe to do so. It's fun to play with that and learn and develop and grow those skill sets, because they can be developed, and they can be very useful. And I would say that with anything, learning to do things safely and finding ways that, be cautious, especially if you're working with spirits and doing mediumship and things like that. I've talked about that before. It's part of one of the reasons why I don't do it very often. And, when you're working with these things, it can bring in other entities, and how to shield yourself, but protect yourself, but also close portals and not have those things come in. So, okay, that's a lot of information. I'm not even sure if I really answered the question, but I I am grateful for Ash from the Tarot Yogi to hold this space and put forth this VR. And if you guys are interested in talking more about this or hearing more of my experiences, um, or have more to say or questions or anything like that, please comment below. I would love to hear what you guys have to say, and I'd love to talk more about it if you're interested. And yeah, or if you're interested in a reading with me, please contact me, book me. My information will be linked in the description box, and we'll go from there. So I'm going to end this one. I hope you guys have a great day. I'm hoping that it'll ease up in the rain so that I can take you guys outside for another video today. All right. Many blessings. Much love. Have a great day. Bye.